Ignorance stashed the thing with the history. I suddenly remembered an incident that happened a few years ago, which I had almost forgotten, so I thought I'd write it down here. It was around 5 years ago, during summer vacation. Back when I was in junior high school, a burglary occurred at a temple very close to my parents' home. Of the 2 treasure vaults at the temple, one of them had its contents stolen. If that were all, it would just be a simple burglary. But something about it felt off. Our family has been patrons of that temple for generations, and the day after the incident, not only my family but also the other temple patrons and neighbors were gathered, and the adults seemed to be discussing something very serious. At the time, I was just a kid, so I only thought, wow, sounds like a lot is going on, and I didn't pay much attention to it. A few days later, I was up in the mountain behind the temple, playing a survival game, more like make-believe war, with airsoft guns, along with my cousin who's the same age as me and some other friends. Suddenly, the head priest came over to us and said, "My name, and my cousin's name, come here for a moment. I have something to talk about." We figured we were in for a scolding for making such a racket in the mountain behind the temple, so we were pretty nervous as we followed him. But instead of telling us off, the priest took us into the temple's main hall and said, "Have a seat for now." He looked dead serious, and my cousin and I, convinced we were in big trouble, huddled in fear. Contrary to our expectations, though, he started talking about something else entirely. It sounded almost unbelievable, like some completely far-fetched story. But I clearly remember how earnest his expression was as he spoke. What he told us went like this, according to the priest Dash. Of the 2 treasure vaults, one indeed held things of value, such as sutras and statues that had been passed down at the temple. The other vault, though called a treasure vault, stored something entirely different. That something else was. Apparently, anywhere you go, temples and shrines often have people who bring them unlucky objects, cursed objects, or the like, asking the priests to purify them or take them in. However, in most cases, it's just superstition or a coincidence, so usually the temple or shrine refuses to take them. Or, at most, they'll do a simple prayer ritual to set the person's mind at ease, then send them on their way. But in those cases where people absolutely insist on leaving the item, or on the rare occasion that something truly dangerous is brought in, they have no choice but to accept it. That second vault was used to store these so-called things with a history. In other words, it existed so the temple could take its time over many years to perform purification rites on them. Of course, since items brought in like that usually have no monetary value only a dangerous spiritual or vengeful side nobody would normally think to steal them. But this time, such cursed items had indeed been stolen. 2 items, to be precise. One of them apparently had ties to my family, which was why the priest had called us in to talk. In short, the vault that had been robbed in the recent incident was the one containing those cursed items. The thief probably assumed the heavily guarded treasure vault was where the valuables were and targeted it. Because there were objects inside the cursed vault that absolutely shouldn't be taken out, its locks and security were normally much tighter than the actual treasure vault. The 2 stolen items were a single Japanese sword and a gold statue. I thought to myself, well, yeah, those sound like they'd fetch a high price. The sword apparently had nothing to do with my family, so the priest only gave us a rough explanation of it. According to him, back when his predecessor was head priest, a man came by saying, "Please, you have to take this from me," and left it there. At that time, the priest's predecessor declined, saying without proper documentation, it could be a crime to keep it. But in the end, the man forced it on him and left. According to today's priest. Since I'm no expert, I can't say what it's worth, but it's evidently very old, and for some reason the maker's mark was shaved off. By the way, the sword supposedly caused its owner to repeatedly dream about killing people with it. The man who brought it said he was worried that he might actually end up killing someone for real. Although the head priest didn't believe the story at first, from the very day the temple took it in, he started having the same nightmare over and over of himself killing someone with that sword. Realizing this could be serious, he decided to lock it away in the cursed vault. As for the legality under Japan's sword and firearms control laws, the predecessor priest apparently sorted things out with the police somehow. The details weren't shared with me. At any rate, it had been kept in the temple ever since. Now, the other item the gold statue was related to my family. Even though we call it a Buddha statue, the priest said he had never seen a Buddha figure shaped like it. It just resembled a Buddha enough that they called it that for convenience, though strictly speaking it wasn't actually a Buddha statue at all. This figure, which we've been calling a Buddha statue, was found nearly 150 years ago by one of my ancestors the day after a massive local flood. It turned up while they were cleaning up the mud and debris. Figuring it was likely something precious since it was made of gold and looked kind of like a Buddha, they brought it home and put it in the family's Buddhist altar room. According to the priest, it might have washed down from higher up in the mountain during the flood. However, our region is very mountainous, and there were no other villages above ours. A few days after they brought the figure home, strange things began happening everywhere. First, the cats and livestock kept by the family started dying from some mysterious illness. Soon, it wasn't just my ancestors' family. Animals in neighboring households also began dying. After a while, the many children in my ancestors' large family started dying one after another. Out of 10 children, 7 died within 6 months. At first, everyone thought it might be some epidemic, and the village tried all kinds of measures, but none had any effect. Then, around the time children in families other than my ancestors also started dying, someone noticed something odd about the gold statue. When it was first found, the statue's face was pretty much blank. No expression to speak of. But one day, my ancestor looked at it and found that it now wore a clear grin. Like it was smirking. Even more disturbing, red lines like blood vessels started spreading upward from near the statue's feet. At first, my ancestor tried to brush it off as his imagination. But each time someone died, those vein-like patterns crept further and further upward. Seeing that it was no longer something he could handle on his own, my ancestor took it to the head priest of the time. Of course, it was made of gold, so I suspect he was reluctant to part with it. The priest back then had heard rumors of the statue but had never seen it for himself until that day. The moment he laid eyes on it, he sensed it was something dangerous. He didn't know why the statue had been made or how it ended up in our village, but he was sure it was an extremely dangerous cursed object. If left alone, it might wipe out the entire village. So the priest immediately began a purification ritual. But a few hours after he started, that priest was found dead in the main hall. Both eyes and ears bleeding, his face twisted in terror. The cause of death was unknown. One thing was certain, though, the statue was involved somehow. Because before he began the ritual, the red vein-like pattern had only reached about its waist, but afterward, it had spread all the way up to the statue's neck. Seeing this, the villagers realized it was beyond them and started planning to throw the statue away somewhere far. But then the next priest who arrived from the temple's head monastery said, "It's likely impossible to exorcise it in one go. It's just too dangerous. We have no choice but to keep it sealed at the temple so the curse doesn't escape, then slowly purify it over the course of multiple generations. It's not something you can just throw away to fix." He managed to convince the villagers of this, and ever since, the statue's curse had been gradually weakened through regular prayers, kept under strict watch at the temple. That's the long story the head priest told us about the stolen objects and their ominous background. He went on to talk about something else. In the past few years, well, a few years at that time, so it's been about a decade from now, there had been a rise in burglaries at temples and shrines. Apparently, most were carried out by foreign criminal rings. The problem is, as I mentioned earlier, plenty of temples and shrines besides this one store problematic objects in vaults that are only referred to as treasure vaults for convenience. And in many places, these items are also being stolen. At the time, I used to browse 2channel, a Japanese online forum, a bit, so I'd read various copy-pasted posts. I figured, oh, I bet it's those thieves from that country, and asked the priest if that was the case. He only gave me a vague reply. Instead, he told me another story. Hypothetically, if all these burglaries at temples and shrines were being committed by that country's theft rings, then dangerous objects would be shipped overseas one after another, with no protective measures whatsoever. That, the priest said, would be incredibly dangerous. If one country were to accumulate a large number of cursed or jinxed items without any caution or order, who knows what might happen. Normally, nobody in their right mind would do something so stupid for no benefit, he said. It might sound odd, but apparently curses have certain affinities, kind of like human relationships. Some curses get along when they encounter each other, others clash, as if their natures don't match. If those items were being brought together somewhere without any logical pattern or restriction, something truly terrible might happen. I don't know what, but that's what the priest said. So I asked him, but if they were taken abroad, shouldn't that mean we're safe? I mean, as long as we don't go there, it won't affect us, right? He answered, that's not how it works. If, hypothetically, a massive number of cursed objects were gathered in one place with no safeguards at all, you'd be in danger merely by forming a connection even if that connection is weak or temporary. If you ever find yourself about to form such a connection, do whatever you can to get away. That was everything I heard back then. To be perfectly honest, I didn't really believe it at the time. I'd just about forgotten the whole thing until recently, when I came across a certain copy-pasted post that made me wonder if maybe this was related. I had this gut feeling it might be connected. Here's the copy-paste. New type of mental disorder danger level, 2004. An explosion in the number of Koreans whose frontal lobes have been destroyed. It might be related to fire sickness, but this time it's actual brain damage. The condition is characterized by damage to the frontal lobe, the most advanced region of the brain. No wonder they have no creative culture. From 1997 to 2004, the rate of occurrence in children skyrocketed by a factor of 100. Because it's a genetic defect, it spreads exponentially. By 2008, it wouldn't be surprising if the rate had ballooned to thousands of times the 1997 baseline. Even now it's a national affliction, but the real concern is that children's rate of occurrence spiked after the turn of the century. By the time these kids grow up in about 10 years, the nation may face a whole new level of devastation. This could end up as a self-holocaust. The timing matches up with when those theft rings first started coming to Japan. I decided I was never going to form any ties with that country. Ignorance can truly be terrifying.